Hey guys, hello my lovely little jack-lanterns, and oh my god, you can see me now. Hello, oh my god, 5 likes, thank you. Hi, hello my lovely little jack-lanterns, and welcome to another live stream, where today we will be doing the Siren's Call 2 audiobook, Chapter 16, Spain. So, it's getting pretty crazy in the story. Once again, I'm not going to rant a ton about what has happened because if you are confused on what has happened thus far, if you're either joining the stream or if you're just a passerby on my channel and see the streams and are interested and click on this one, I advise going and listening to the other streams to catch up on what is happening so far. So, yeah. So I really, really hope that you enjoy this stream. Today we're on chapter 16. So we have finally made it to the year 1681. So a whole year has passed. Excuse me. A whole year has passed in the story. So it is no longer 1680, it is 1681. And they are, the main characters are heading to Spain, their first location to acquire a letter of marque. So pretty exciting stuff, guys. So it's getting pretty intense. They are heading there to talk to this Pope of Spain to possibly, they're going there to, lie their way into the church to basically get him to sign a marque because they're going to act like tradesmen. Okay, we need a letter of marque so you could, give us passage to trade, but really they just need it to have a letter of marque. So yeah, that is pretty much the gist of the thing going on here. So thank you guys for joining the stream again. I can see my lovely girlfriend has joined the stream. Hi, babe. And it's very exciting. She's basically joined every single stream I've had, and this is the 18th total stream I've done on my channel. So 18 streams is a lot. So she's been everyone, and she's gone to all the Siren's Call streams. So I'm very, very, very thankful and appreciative of her support on my YouTube channel and joining all my streams. So thank you. So yeah. So this one is going to be a decently long stream. It's going to be over an hour probably. The Spain section is about, in the book, 40-ish pages, but in the audiobook it's about an hour or hour 15. So it will be decently long. So I'm very, very, very excited to continue this audiobook. And they're heading to church. Heading to church in Spain to be enveloped in the Catholic faith. So here we go, guys. So we're on page... and so I already escaped the colony and had a little Christmas dinner with everyone. Okay, so we're on part 9. So, which is a vestry within a nunnery, within a monastery, within a priory. And we're on page 402. So we're pretty much about halfway or a little over halfway through the story. So yeah, we're going on a journey through 17th century pirate era. So I hope you guys enjoy this chapter. It is one of my favorite chapters. I really, really enjoy it. So it is, yeah. So let's get into it, guys. Turn up. Portugal, Spain, March 1681.
All eight of us stood outside on the docks with the golden bow anchored in the bay, beaming in the sunlight from our golden underhull and sides. I had told Brita to stay aboard the ship for her safety, and Tim did the same for Eleanor. The other dock Spanish ships were anchored into the sandbed as the swirly ocean waters slapped against the dock sides, and it crinked under our boots. All of us had changed into fresh clothes, for the rags we were forced to wear for 4 months were reeking with an ungodly smell, and we tossed those dirty cotton into the ocean. Jeb slipped on his red captain's cap over his long curly black hair. Marque slowly stroked his tawny black mustache under his nose as we checked out our swords and flintlock pistols. We couldn't bring any long-barreled muskets because it would attract attention to civilians here. I made sure my flintlock pistol was secure on my right side of my belt, strapped in and loaded with powder. My new sword my love had gotten me was on my left side in its new scabbard. The hustle and bustle of the docks were littered with Spanish-speaking women, men, and sailors, and even some English and Italian was being used around us. Many sailors were loading shipments of spice, along with multiple musket rifles and blunderbusses, onto their ships for tradesmen and merchantmen in their stands setting at the docks. Daniel secured his longsword, while Cortez stepped ahead, his long blue trench coat swaying as he walked. He turned and tipped his hat. Cortez had gotten over his seasickness within the next few days after Christmas, and was as healthy as a horse.
Amigos, are we leading to the city? Cortez said. Good to be back.
He was right. Since Cortez was a Spaniard and had been to Portugal various other times, he knew his directions around the vicinity. Before we leave the docks and into the town, let's go over the plan, Marque said.
Okay, what's the plan? Spit it, Daniel said.
I rested against a stacked wooden barrel as sailors darted across the docks. The plan is simple, laddies, Jim said. First, we must find the cathedral in which Pope de Leon Alexander XIII is having mass, in which Cortez is helping us find it, I said.
Right, my friend. His cathedral is in the center of the villa,
Cortez said. Perfect, and mass should be starting when? Then asked.
In an hour. We should make it there in idle time, Cortez muttered.
We sit through mass, but I know you, Daniel, I gestured at him, will not enjoy that.
Aye, but I'll endure it, lad, he said, still upset we had to go to church.
After mass, me, Daniel, and Marque will approach the Pope and address him in a manner of joy. We will tell him we are from England, and we sailed here to seek out to work in his priory and learn the ways of the Catholic rituals and of their God, I said. All right, how should we address him then?
Jeff asked. Politely, try not to curse, I said. That's gonna be fucking hard, lad, Daniel said.
He is a man of God. We will refrain from such blasphemy, Marque added. After we talk to him, we will ask for a tour around the church to get a layout of our job. I used air quotes when I said the word job. While this is happening, Tim, Jeb, and Finn and Cortez will check out the perimeter and watch for the Spanish Inquisition. Right. We'll set up blockades around the church in case things get out of hand, Finn noted. Yes, Finn, make sure they are sturdy. Secondly, cars with the other slaves rounding up the crew, I said. They'll be sturdier than a woman's corset, Finn smiled. What is your crew? Jeb asked. My crew, half watching the ship and protecting the fair maidens on board, while the other half, I already sent them into the town to enjoy a drink and slander. I told them to come to the church to help us fight once we secure the first letter, Marque said. How are you planning to get the letter? Finn asked. Once the tour of the place is finished, we will ask him if we could dine with him this afternoon. Once we are alone in his vestry, we make him sign the letter, I said. You mates know the plan now? Daniel asked. We all nodded. Marque stepped over ahead with Cortez.
Come on, gentlemen, let's go to church.
The plaza inside the center of Portugal City was quite beautiful. Pigeons fluttered by us as we traced across a giant stone plaza with a fountain in the center of the stone. A fountain of carved white marble Greek men spouting water into a bowl shined brightly in the morning sun. The plaza was littered with people speaking Spanish, various women, men, and children dressed in nice cotton clothing for mass, with black coats, white and blue dresses in the warm wind. Children scattered across the plaza as the sun shined down on their heads, casting a warm ember glow. I could hear the ding-ding of the bells by the hour from the ship's mastheads from the blue bay behind us. Markets sat on the sides of the street under orange tents and vendors trying to sell you priceless jewelry, rings, and herbs. We all followed Cortez, who seemed to be enjoying himself, as we took right and lefts in the city. Once he had to stop and ask for directions from a guard, and he told us to retrace a few steps back and head right. The buildings rose on either side made of white marble, stonework, and brick. Portugal had an enchanting atmosphere about it, with people with tan skin laughing and talking amongst us, and some gave us eyes to see that we were white, and a few Latina women smiled at me and Daniel with flowers in their black hair and pink dresses. Just in time for Mass, we found the cathedral in which the Pope was teaching. The massive cathedral stretched well into the heavens, made out of carved stonework. Stained glass windows depicting biblical scenes adorned the sides of the building. It was a Gothic style for sure. Every twist and turn up the twirly church was carved in roses, twirls, swirls, and crosses. Gargoyles sat on the steps of the edge of the church, with snarling teeth and squinting brows and batty wings. The top swelled up to a point like a castle, with bells banging inside the bell tower. Two main doors made from redwood with embedded black metal doorknobs, and across the size of a rowboat was the top of the door with a praying angel. Jesus Christ was crucified on the cross, his blood drizzling out of his head from the crown of thorns. I knew Marque and Cortez was Catholic, so this was not new to them, but for the rest of us, it will be an experience. The bell echoed across the city, and I could see people hurrying over in neatly dressed outfits through the main doors of the chapel. I ushered my mates to follow, and we made our way, blending ourselves into the crowd. The main double doors creaked open, and we stepped into the church. Inside the church was something like I've never seen before. In the back of a choir, of women lined in the back near an organ were humming and singing this enchanting melody that made my heart feel warm, singing the hymns of God. Just inside the entrance to the Catholic Church was the vestibule, a large standing font of pool used to perform the sacrament of baptism, which is located to my left. The fascal candle stands next to the baptismal pool. It was lit and immersed in the pool as a sign of Christ that has come to life. Holy oil sat in glass cups, and Catholic sacraments also is kept in this area. I watched people start to gather up the glass cups and drinking burning oil. Why are they drinking the oil? I whispered to Marque. It is something Catholics do once they enter the church ready for Mass. It means they have truly entered the house of God. He said and took a cup and sipped the oil. Me, Dan, and Tim exchanged looks, and I took up a glass cup. I put it to my lips, slapped it softly, and the oil felt thick and sloppy, and tasted like the oil we used on cannons. I wanted to vomit, but I held it down and slept it off. Daniel slept as quickly, and Tim almost vomited as well. Finn and Jeb and Cortez drank the oil, and then we proceeded in. Smaller wall-mounted holy water fonts were near the interior church doors. What about the other water fonts? Asked Finn. Catholics bless themselves with holy water when entering and leaving the church to renew their baptismal promises, Cortez whispered to us as our voices slightly echoed in the big cathedral. The interior church doors opened up to the nave, or the main room of the Catholic Church. Pews adorned on both of our sides as people started to gather their seats. All of us quickly walked down the red carpeted aisle and slid into a wooden pew, all 8 of us side by side. I noticed a kneel platform ahead of me. What's that for? Members of the congregation are seated in this area, typically in rows of pews. Each row of pews has a kneeler, so congregants may kneel at specific times during the Mass. In most churches, the walls of the nave feature 14 plaques known as the Stations of the Cross, illustrating the story of Christ's crucifixion. Marque said, Why do we need to know? Why do we need to see Jesus killed? Daniel asked, interested in this religion. Because we need to give thanks for what he did for all of our sins, Cortez said. I could see the sanctuary at the front of the Roman Catholic Church. It is separated from the nave by an altar rail at which congregants receive Holy Communion. A crucifix sat in the prominence in the sanctuary, visible to all. On the left side of the sanctuary is the pulpit, from which the gospel or the teachings of Jesus Christ is read. On the right side is the lectern, from which the estable or the word of the apostles is read. Chairs sat up near the altar provided in the sanctuary for the member of the clergy celebrating the Mass, lay assistants and altar servers. Light wax candles were lined everywhere in the church, and stained glass windows depicted scenes from the Bible. Why are there depictions of these stories? Finn asked. Catholic churches are often distinguished by their stained glass windows and statuettes honoring religious figures. These elements of a Catholic church reflect a time when the Mass was conducted in Latin, and not all followers could understand the readings. Stained glass windows and statuettes helped illustrate the Bible's words and drew the faithful into the experience of the Mass. Votive candles are often kept in the front of the larger statuettes. Churchgoers with a special request or petition may light one of the candles and offer prayers for a saint's intercession. Marque said, I found this religion confusing. I didn't truly understand the purpose of it, but it sounded romantic. Finally, all the churchgoers collected their pew seats and it was quiet, except for the humming of the choir of ladies. A minute later, I heard a door behind the altar open up. Out stepped a man in white and purple clothing. It was the Pope of Portugal. Is that the Pope? Jeb asked.
I said. Why does he wear that funny hat?
Daniel snickered, but Marque hushed him. The Pope was a fairly old man. We had grabbed pews close to him to study his actions and movements, forming up to address him after Mass. He wasn't fat, but he had some punch to his belly through the white robe. His face was solemn and calm, as if he believed he was the man sent down from God. But in reality, he was just a normal nobleman, like all of us, preaching the gospel. His white silken robe covered his entire body, and at the ends of his robe were purple lines that mixed with the white and gold. His hat had golden etchings of linen in the form of Gothic crosses, were placed on the front, the sides, and stretched high above his head and came to a hot, flat stop at the end. His skin upon his face was wrinkly and withered, for this man of God had to be in his 70s to 80s. His eyes were pale and grey, and his lips thin as a fishing line. He walked slowly to a wooden podium that faced before all of his church gatherers. In his hands, he carried a golden Bible with as many designs that would have been in a Rococo mansion ceiling. He stopped, placing the book on the podium and opening it up until it lay open to the pages. He then scanned the pews and spoke. Thank you for attending Mass. We are present in the house of God, and as we all know, these who attend the church are worthy of God to enter into heaven. But we do sin at times, do we not? God is eternally forgiving. Forgiving, is he not? The priestman shouted at us as his voice echoed through the cathedral. A murmur ran through the pews of people agreeing. Daniel gave a grunt of annoyance. Marque, Tim, and Cortez were clearly invested, for I knew that they three were from religious descent. Even though Timothy was a Christian, I have seen him practice some of the Catholic faith with Marque while aboard the ship in the prayer room near Marque's cabin. Phil and Jeb didn't look too pleased either. I was with them and Daniel. This was not for me, but we had to endure it. The Pope of Spain spread his hands out. We all sin. The other day, I came across a merchant selling apples on the side of the street. I asked the man how much they were, and he said 3 pence. Now, that could be the truth, could it not? The crowd nodded with the man in the podium. He continued. Although, just before I asked him if it were 3 pence, I had noticed that the man who had purchased the apple had to pay 2 pence for the apple. Maybe he was a friend of the sellers, but it's unlikely. Lying is a sin, people. The Pope frowned at the thought of lying. The crowd started to get a bit rambunctious, stirring in the seats. Perhaps the man needed the extra pence because he was low on open coin. Or his family could be starving, so he needed the food, the Pope said. Perhaps, but that is not an excuse to lie about. The church people nodded. Daniel whispered to me, so what? What if his family is starving and he needed the money? Oh, I agree, I said. The seller could have needed the money. It looks like the Pope already has enough coin. This is shit. Let's bolt, Daniel said. No, I know you don't agree with religious beliefs, but we need that mark, Daniel, I said. He slumped back deeper into his pew, sighing. The Pope turned the page. Let me read a passage from the book of Galatians. How long do these things go on for? Finn asked bored. A while, Cortez muttered. How long? Jeb asked. 2 hours, Cortez said. Phil and Jeb's eyes bulged, and they sighed, throwing their heads back on the head of the pews, making some of the occupants grunt annoyingly at behind them. As the Pope read the passage, it all seemed to swirl together. The Pope read the passage, and many more after that, and went over ceremonial attributes, and the talk about Christ's crucifixion, turning water to wine, biblical stories, and the Holy Grail over the next hour and a half. Me and Daniel had almost fallen asleep on each other if Marque and Tim had nudged us awake every 20 minutes. There was an interval of a choir of nuns singing, and the hymns sung by us churchgoers, and me, Daniel, Finn, and Jeb just mouthed the words. But Tim, Cortez, and Marque sang it with such grace and heart. After the singing, we took our seats back in our pews, where the Pope talked of heaven and hell, and the difference between Catholic and Protestant, which made some people uncomfortable and made Marque and Cortez glare in frustration. Finally, the act of communion came around. I watched a nun dressed in all black with a black shawl upon her face bring the Pope a loaf of bread cupped in a white cloth. Then the nun, with a white pale face, carried a silver jug of red wine to the priest. The Pope took them both gratefully. With a knife, he cut the bread before the church in halves and then wiped down the dripping wine from the silver jug. He then walked back to the podium. Bread and wine, a good combination. Daniel grinned, knowing he was hungry. You only get this small piece of loaf and a sip of wine, Marque said, and Dan looked defeated. Why can't everyone get a huge loaf of bread? Finn asked. That's not how it works, gents, Marque said. The Pope faced the noblemen of Spaniards before him, spreading his arms out for grace. Come forth, his frail old voice echoed. The noble people started to get out of their pews and gather in a line down the center. Marque eyed us. Just follow my lead. We all stood up and waddled out of the pew. We stood in a line behind two women in a blue and red colourful dresses. The line moved rather quickly as we inched up to the Pope. I peered past a man's shoulder who was speaking Spanish quietly to another man, and over his feathered hat to see a man kneeling before the Pope. He gave the man a piece of bread, and then the lad took a sip from the jug of wine as the Pope gave it to him. Is this communion the end of this ordeal? Jeb asked. Almost. Marque muttered, amused by us not enjoying the service. After someone would take the communion, they would return to their previous pew, where they had sat at the start of the religious preach. The line moved fast. As before I knew it, only a man and Daniel was in front of me before I got my turn. The rest of the crew was behind me, with some more noble people behind them. The woman knelt before the people and drank the wine. She returned to her seat. Finally, Daniel was taking the kneel in front of me. Daniel's long black locks swayed as he took a knee. He looked up at the Pope. The Pope did the sign of the Holy Ghost in the air, in a cross shape, and gave Daniel the bread, in which he ate, and Daniel sipped the wine. He stood up, the red wine drips in his black beard, and looked at me. This wine might beat Marquis, but don't tell him. Daniel whispered to me as he passed, making me smile a bit. It was my turn. I came up to the altar where the Pope stood before me. Behind him, silver metal organs stretched high to the chandelier Gothic angel ceiling made from stone. I slowly kneeled to both knees and looked up. His face was calm as the ocean waters in a morning breeze. He smiled slightly at me, and his pale grey eyes stared into mine, trying to figure out who I was. Sadly, this religious man would not know that me and my mates would have him at gunpoint for the letter in 3 hours. He was the Pope Leon XIII of Spain, who conducted business among merchantmen and the noblemen by signing letters of marque to captains and sailors to sail through the Spanish seas in good haste and in good peace. Little did he know that we were pirates of English and French and Finnish trade. He made the sign in the air above my head of the Holy Spirit in a cross. He held a silent smile on his face, just a little subtle to show barely any emotion. He ripped off a piece of wheat and gracefully put it in my palm. May you eat the body of Christ for which he gave his life for our sins, the Pope spoke in a holy voice. I felt the soft dough through my finger, popping it into my mouth, feeling the sweet of the barley fields. He brought the silver jug around and tipped it to my lips. This is the blood of Christ, for which it is spilled for our sins, he said, and I gulped the red wine, tasting the sweet nectar of Spanish red. I danced on my taste buds with the sweet scent of berries, and he took the jug away, and I wanted more of the wine. He did another cross over my head as I gulped the wine. I stood up and quickly made my way to the pew next to Daniel. Once my butt hit the pew, Daniel spoke to me. I fancy the wine in the church any day, he said quietly, trying to not let his voice echo. I agree, sir. The wine was excellent, I said. You truly think our plan will work? He asked. I do. It has to. We got to do this, Dan, I told him. Marque took his seat next to me and leaned to my ear. The Pope is a Catholic man, but practices some of the Christian ways. When we address him, we must let him know we are educated in the manner of Catholic faith. Me and Dan nodded with him. After the communion, we were forced to kneel down at the head of the pews, and I clasped my hands up into the air praying. We prayed silently as the Pope raised his hands to the sky. May we give thanks for this glorious day that has been set upon us, people. May God guide you in the path towards righteousness, and may you cast the devil away. Keep your loved ones close and pray for salvation into heaven, he screamed. The organ started tuning up in the back and screamed at the church as we finished praying. I didn't consider myself a religious man, but I sent a silent prayer to my love Brita for this plan to go through.
I'm counting on you, mate, I thought to the so-called God above me.
We stood up and clapped. We clapped with the crowd as the Pope smiled at the podium closing the Golden Bible. After the applause, people gathered the things, women with the parcels guiding their children out of the church. We stayed in the pew. I turned to Finn, Jeb, Cortez, and Tim.
All right, you know the plan. While me, Daniel, and Marque talk to the Pope of hiring. You four go get Kai and round the French crew up. Scout the city. Figure out where the Spanish Inquisition soldiers are most relevant.
Got it, sir,
Jeb said. How will we know when to hurry back to you? Finn asked. Once we have the letter, I'm sure a fight will break out. Follow the sounds of gunfire, Daniel said. Good luck, laddies. See you gentlemen in a few hours, Finn said.
I watched Finn, Jeb, Cortez, and Tim blend into the crowd of noblemen and women as they made their way out of the cathedral. I turned my head to the head of the church where the Pope was discussing something with a nun. They talked for a few minutes, and then the nun went back into the priory. Marque gave us a watchful eye. We straightened the long hair and petticoats and made our way down the center of pews to the priest. As he was straightening up some papers by the podium, Marque was ahead of me, and Dan, smiling as he reached his hand out at him. Good morrow, sir. My name is Marque de Lafayette. You must be the Pope de Leon Alexandria of Spain. Am I correct in saying so? Marque smiled, his mustaches under his nose twitching. Marque held a good face when it came to faking an introduction and acting. The Pope faced his three for a second, then smiled. I am. Might I say, my friends and I admire your lovely sermon. With the voice you have, sir, and the Gospels you spoke, just made my heart flutter to our Lord. Marque smiled. The Pope grinned from ear to ear, his sludgy skin jiggling. Thank you, sir. I tried to honestly spread the Lord's word through all of Spain and its occupants. I am sound with the accents, and could detect you are a Frenchman, which I am assuming you are a Catholic. Yes, sir. I am, your lordship, from France, and raised Catholic all my life, Marque said. You didn't plan to switch to Protestant, he asked. Gods, no. Who would, am I correct in saying so? No low-life nobleman in the right state of mind would dare traverse to that religion. King Louis does not have that power over me, Marque said. I was afraid I'd have to throw you out of my sanctuary if you were one.
And they both laughed with each other.
Let's hope not,
Marque said.
The Pope gazed at me and Daniel. My apologies. Who are these young men? He spoke in a thick Spanish accent, just like Cortez. I stepped forward, shaking his hand. Pleasure to be acquainted. Henry Hartstone, good sir. Daniel seized the man's frail hand with his big hand. Daniel stood almost a foot taller than the short Pope.
Daniel Ogsworth, sir.
Well, nice to meet you all. Are you Catholic as well?
He asked us both. Christian, but switching to Catholicism, I said.
And you, sir?
The Pope asked Dan. Yes, I am Catholic. I'm sorry.
He stopped talking, coughing, and I could tell he was having a hard time even saying the word.
Yes, Catholic.
He said like he was sounding out the word. The Pope nodded. I see. I decided to bring Henry here to a mass to let him get familiar with the religion.
Marque butted in.
Well, being a Catholic is not just about practicing your prayers. It's about faith, the Pope said respectively.
Aren't they all? Daniel muttered under his breath, but the Pope caught it. I'm sorry? Asked the Pope. Me and Marque looked at him in confusion and frustration. I knew he was having a hard time with all of this religious jargon, but he needed to maintain the act. I just said that you're right, your lordship, that Catholicism is about faith, I agree.
Me and Marque sighed with relief. The Pope smiled through his wrinkles. Correct, sir. It is a powerful religion that demands nothing but absolute faith to Jesus Christ.
Jesus. The cathedral is magnificent, I said, trying to bring the conversation away from the topic with Dan.
The Pope eyed the angels carved in the stone above.
One sec, I'm sorry. That went on a lot longer than I intended. Fuck. Okay, guys, let's just continue the stream. I'm sorry.
Wings were fluttering behind the backs, and the naked babies carried golden harps. Isn't it? It was built in 1346 during the Spanish and French art movements. A sculptor under the name of Michelangelo built this church. It took him 5 years to complete it, and it is a sight. A masterpiece of architecture, Marque smiled. The Pope faces 3. So, what brings you men to Portugal? Well, my esteemed sir, we just sailed and docked in today, in a matter of fact, Marque said. Was it your ship you docked? He asked. Yes, I am the captain of the ship. The Golden Belle is her name, and she runs plenty fast in the waves, Marque said. I imagine you were tired from your long sea voyage. How long did it take you to sail here? The Pope asked. A few months, I broke in. I see. Well, why are you coming to my church specifically? He asked. We heard you were looking at hiring some new vestry mentors for the church. We were wondering if you'd be interested in hiring us 3, I said. The Pope looked bewildered and took it aback. Hire you? Yes. Now, we have never worked inside a priory before, but we would like to earn some coin by being your administrators to you and the nuns, Marque said. We have enough administrators in the priory, he said. Are they all Spanish? Daniel asked. Yes, they are. What does that have to do with anything? He questioned. I am from France, and these 2 men are from England. We could help find churchgoers from other countries that sail to Spain for trade. Marque said, smiling. The Pope faced the podium, staring at the Bible. He thought it over in silence for a minute. My heartbeat picked up. We needed this to work. If it didn't go well, we had force, but that would end in disaster. He turned to us, placing his hand on the God book. I sent a silent prayer to God above. He spoke to me and thought it was a good idea. I agree to your offer. I have some documents to sign and attend to among the monks, but how about we reconvene at 2 o'clock for lunch up near the bell tower to discuss this matter further? That sounds perfect, Marque said. Splendid. It is, The Pope looked for a clock. I saw a giant clock above the organs in the back made of white crystals with big black arrows ticking. It was near 11. It's 11, sir, I said. He turned his head behind him to the clock and back to us. It is 2 o'clock. In the meantime, I will have one of the nuns show you around the monastery, nunnery, and church vestries, and botanical gardens in the back. He said, closed the Bible and took it up. A nun in a black robe stood near an entrance next to the organs with a wooden door shut. Elizabeth, take these gentlemen to the church and show them around. At 2 o'clock, bring them to the top of the bell tower for a meeting. The old Pope said in a stern voice. Yes, your lordship, she spoke quietly. The Pope smiled. If you'll excuse me, and disappeared into the back of the cathedral. This way, please, the nun said to us. We all looked at each other and started to walk to her. As we walked, I grabbed Daniel's arm. Keep it together. We can't lose this, I said to him sternly. Oh, I understand. We will sail through this smoothly. Daniel whispered back. We came up to the nun, who unlocked the big iron latch and swung the door open with a loud creak. Right this way, gentlemen. Finn vastly walked across the plaza with Jeb and Cortez and Tim trailing behind him. The plaza was crowded with Spanish speakers as they walked through a group of pigeons that fluttered in a cooing form into the blue warm air. The 4 of them were heading to a tavern to get car, and the rest of the French crew to scout out the town. After they made their way through the narrow streets of Portugal, passing by carriages carried by oxes with hay in them to the farmlands, they made it to the tavern. The 3 of them broke into the door and found the bar was not occupied fully. Half of the tables were empty. Only a few lonely people were drinking and speaking Spanish quietly. The windows were open to let in cool air from the warm March day.
Finn heard a clatter of laughter in the back and he recognized the voice. He trailed through the narrow passageways of the tables of wood. He made it to the back where Carr was gulping a mug of tequila, laughing with a few black slaves in the French crew. Finn came up to him. "Carr," he said. Carr stopped drinking and looked up at Finn, his black skin as dark as the shadows. He smiled and his pierced bone nose wriggled.
"Finn, you are quieter than a gazelle. I didn't even hear you come in."
"Thought you weren't going to drink too much," Jeb growled, noticing 2 bottles of tequila were now empty.
"We were just waiting,"
Carr said. "I only wanted to see how Spanish drink tasted," a French sailor smirked. "Amigos, let's go now," Cortez said.
"Relax, man. Sit down. Have a drink with us."
Carr grinned. Finn could tell he was at least half drunk. Finn calmly set his hand down on the table, knocking over a glass bottle of tequila. "Henry, Marque, and Daniel are touring the church right now. We only have a few hours." "Carr, have you scouted for soldiers?" Tim questioned.
"Not yet."
Carr said. Jeb, infuriated with his man's behavior, in which he was rescued him from a lifetime of slavery, pounded the table, grabbed the hold of Carr's big bulging black arm. "Listen, I am your captain, and I order you to come with us." The French crew nodded and stood up, burping from the drink, gathering their swords.
"That didn't work for you on your ship, the Dauntless."
Carr smirked. Finn knew he was drunk and would regret what he was saying, but Jeb glowered in anger. He punched Carr in the face, who sprawled out of his chair, dropping to the floor. The other occupants started to notice the argument, and the bartender started to notice and made his way to us. He wiped his hand on a white cloth. ¿Qué está pasando aquí?"
What's going on here?
Cortez turned to him. "Nada, amigo."
Nothing, friend.
The bartender stopped and returned to his counter. Jeb picked up Carr and pushed him against the wall. "Okay. You listen here, you little shit. I took you away from that slave auction to save your skin from a lifetime of that. And that is how you talk to me? You can't talk to me that way. I am your captain. We are here on an important mission with Henry, so you better clean up your act, or I'll make damn sure you return to the slave block on the lowest bidder, you fucking nigger. You know what? You know what white men see? Color. Nothing else, you big black ape. Prove them wrong." Jeb shouted. Carr sat there for a minute, corrected his manner, and nodded. They collected the things and walked out of the tavern. Once they stepped out on the cobble, Finn noticed a wooden pin about as wide as the ship's deck, holding about 50 brown bulls, snorting with riveting fury. Finn looked up into the sky, shielding himself from the sun, and spotted a line of marching soldiers in blue and red uniforms carrying muskets. "Good, now let's go. We have to make sure the area around the church is secure once they get that letter. It's going to be one hell of a fight," Finn said, and they started off to the marching band of soldiers. The nun took us through a stone hallway that opened up into the monastery. The monastery was a big room consisting of many writing desks, all lined in rows of 3 that covered the center of the room. In the back was a bowl full of water to the rim to wash their hands and bald heads in. Bookshelves full of holy texts lined either sides of the big room. The ceiling was a dome with etched-in stone lines that traveled to the center of a golden ring at the top. Angels and holy men's faces were carved into the stone as well. At the writing desks, the monks scribbled away on the parchment with quills, copying from the sacred golden Bible. They wore brown wool cloaks with hoods attached to the back, and all of them ranged from young to old. Their heads were bald, with their hair on the sides of their scalps. None of them took attention to notice us. "What are they doing?" Daniel asked the nun. The nun was wearing a black dress that flowed over her feet, and a black cap that adorned her face to where her hair was cut off. She had a plain white face, kind blue eyes, fat lips, and high cheekbones. "That is where the monks write down the holy text," she said. "The holy text?" Daniel asked. "Yes. They sit here from dusk to dawn, copying down from the Bible onto a paper to make more copies of the Bible. It is a delicate task that takes time to master," she said. "Well, where do they sleep?" I asked, confused. "Once their work is done, they leave the desks and make their way down to the road to their chambers," Elizabeth muttered. Daniel and I shrugged as we made our way out of the room and into the hallway with windows lining on my left with the bright sun basking through it. She took us to the vestries, which was an office for priests to do their work. "This is the offices," Elizabeth said after we took a left down the hall, passing by 2 nuns carrying beaded crosses. When she swung open the door, it was empty except for a wooden oak desk with a candle sitting atop it and papers and books piled upon it. A chair was behind the desk. "Is this where the Pope does his daily work?" Marque questioned. "It is," she said, and closed the door. We folded down a hall of stained glass windows of rainbow, and it opened up to a courtyard with trim green bushes, a rock path, and a small creek running through the courtyard. Birds chirped above as we cut through it. As she guided us through, she asked, What is your purpose here? Why did you want to help out the church? Marque cleared his throat. We want to help it succeed and gather more followers and aid the Pope in his daily matters. As well as help the nuns, Daniel added. Elizabeth smiled at him, and I knew nuns were supposed to be chastity-ful, but I could see her getting nervous around with Dan. After the courtyard, it opened up to a building attached to the back of the church. The nunnery is the place where we reside. The Pope takes good care of us. She opened the 2 doors, and we followed her into another smaller version of the cathedral that looked similar, except there were a few confessional booths to the sides. Beds were lined with white sheets and pillows, and some nuns were praying at a golden altar in the back. A few gasped a little when we traveled through, for they must have not seen young men in a long time. Most of the nuns were young and virgin, smiling at us three, wanting to take us back to the confessionals and give us a good time, while the older nuns scouted us in disgust as inconsiderate men. Elizabeth pointed to a dining hall with a long table to my right. That's the dining hall, where we all feast in the evenings after the sermon and our prayers, she said. I see. What are the sermon hours? Marque asked, trying to sound official, that this was a real potential hurry. We start at 8 in the morning and they last till 10. Then we have the afternoon services at 3 to 4 for the confessionals and prayers, Elizabeth said. Where are the Pope's quarters? I asked. I'm not at liberty at revealing that information at the moment, Elizabeth said. We nodded and continued into the nunnery. Many nuns clutched cross necklaces and muttered Latin at us as we passed in, which I assumed was not fashionable. The nunnery glittered with religious holy light through the windows atop of the beams of the rafters, high above, casting light into the big room. Some nuns prayed at their bedsides, while others talked and recited phrases from the Bible. We braced through the nunnery until we broke into the botanical gardens. This is our gardens. We sometimes come out here to recite our teachings and hymns, Elizabeth said. It is truly one of God's glorious creations. The gardens were beautiful. A neatly trimmed garden of grass is contoured by adjoined bushes and shrubs. A single wide tree stands near the right edge. Its leaves rise like a pinnacle of the garden. The flower beds are clearly a pride and joy within its garden, as they're very well cared for. They're forever trying to expand. The bushes and shrubs reach 2.1 meters /7 feet high, but they tend to grow far bigger in the wild. A small picket fence loops around the garden, leading visitors to the best spots. Grass is starting to reclaim even all the pieces of the land, eager to expand their own dominion. The tree, a maple, has stood there for several decades and brings life and offers home to life in so many ways. It's no wonder that this pride and joy of the creator of this garden. The flower beds cannot be denied their share of the attention, and the bushes and shrubs are nothing to sneeze at, but there's no way to win when the garden is designed with the focus on the tree. Birds chirped overhead. Yes, it's beautiful, I said. You can rest here until you're done with the Pope. I must take my vows. I'll return to take you to the bell tower, Elizabeth smiled. Before she could walk away, Daniel grabbed her arm, and she winced as if she was in pain. I just admire this Gothic style. Might you show me more of the church? Me and Marque exchanged looks of shock at Dan, for he seemed truly invested in this. Elizabeth stopped for a second and then nodded. Daniel followed her out of the gardens, leaving me and Marque sitting on a stone bench near a red rose bush. What are we doing in the tower? I asked him. We must discuss matters for a bit. He will present the letter of Marque, for we need one to leave our ship to dock for our time being here for a period of weeks, Marque said. I nodded. Everything is going accordingly. I looked at a rose on the bush, and it reminded me of the countless sailors' blood I have shed with my blade. Finn hid behind a wall with the gang behind him, watching a patrol of soldiers march down the street with armed muskets. They had spent the next hour examining the towns and streets, which carriage comes at what time, the moments and positions of the soldiers passed through the harbor plaza in town. It was 1:30, and Finn was worried if the others didn't hurry up, they would run out of time before the Pope would retire to his other services. They needed to get this done in one day. The Bandit Musketeers, with their puffy hats, tan skin, and dark hair, went down the cobbled road. Finn turned to the rest behind him. Come on, he said. All of them quickly and calmly walked across the plaza with the cathedral in front of them. The clock tower ticked away, taking away less time. Finn scanned the stone in the ground, then down to the bay with the ships docked in the water. Musketeers were near the harbor at this time, so we could scout out some spots to take hiding from if things broke out. The fountain is the best source to take cover, Tim said. It could support from musket fire, but it is too low to the ground, Jeb noticed. We need to cause some sort of distraction, because once Henry and them sees the letter, the Pope will notify the guards fast, Finn said.
Why don't they just kill the Pope?
Carr asked. Isn't the entire Spanish fleet after us? Jeb shouldered it. Carr frowned and pointed.
Well, we can set up some powder lines and light them up with our flintlock powder sets, causing smoke to blind the soldiers.
Finn thought and looked at the cathedral. He saw the fountain spouting water and knew it could work for cover for a few minutes, and the smoke would cover their escape to the ship. He turned to the French crew. Hide the buildings up above behind the fountain, Finn said, aiming at the marble buildings stacked together. Once it is time, you will fire from above. The French crew nodded, and all of them began to make their enforcements to the plaza. The clock chimed too. It was time. Me and Marque was taken by Elizabeth with Daniel to the main hall of the cathedral, up the stairs to the bell tower room. Once we climbed up a wooden ladder and through a hatch, we came to an open room with windows surrounding us all around. A table sat with plates of cooked pork, sizzling starches, and a cake. The Pope was still in his sermon outfit, sitting at the table, but his hat was on the floor, revealing his bald head. He smiled at us. Glad you could join me. With pleasure, Marque smiled. Elizabeth left us, closing the hatch. We took our seats. Once we were comfortable, the Pope offered us a jug of wine. Care for wine? No, thank you, not at the moment, I said. The Pope gladly served himself a glass and sipped on the red Spanish wine. Daniel did the same as Marque, and they sipped for a few seconds. The Pope set his glass down and set back his belly, bulging out from under the white robe. Tell me, Captain Marque, are you sure you and your men are equipped for this job? The Pope asked. I can assure you, sir, that no one else would be fitted for the job than us. Marque smiled. You seem awfully sure for a seaman. The Pope chuckled, and Marque glared at him, but the Pope didn't notice. I then poured a glass of red wine and sipped it nervously. Well, I'm versed in many things. Marque smiled forcefully. I can see that. Did you enjoy the tour of the church itself and the other areas? He questioned. We did, yes. The gardens are an excellent addition to this place, I smiled. The Pope nodded happily. They're quite a sight, I agree. Marque leaned in. Sir, let's talk about what our job would be here exactly. What will we be helping you with? The Pope sipped his wine. You would be helping me sort some of my documents, such as marks, money to the church, civil matters, and such. Marque nodded. We heard the word Marque. We had him. How much pay? Daniel firstly spoke in the talk. 7 pence in a day, so 49 pence in a week. The Pope said, and my eyes widened at this price. Maybe we should quit this adventure and join the priory, but I knew better. Good price. Well, what about the nuns? Are they involved in this helping? Marque asked. The nuns really handle confessionals, the Pope said. Shouldn't a nun also be aiding you in the prayer room as well? I asked. They pray by their bedsides at night, but that's all they need them to do, he said. What of the monks? Daniel. What of them? The Pope questioned that. Would they be helping with the aiding of the documents? He asked. The Pope seemed confused by this array of questions brought to him. We were trying to confuse him into thinking we were just honest noblemen looking for a job. I suppose the monks could help with money installments. What does this have to do with the... He stopped talking to the sound of gunfire outside. My heart flipped. I shot up from my chair, almost spilling the red wine glass. Is that gunfire? The Pope asked, frightened. I made my way, eyeing down through the window to the plaza. A crowd of people ran away, screaming from the plaza. A herd of soldiers were firing near the fountain where I could see Finn, Jeb, Kai, and Tim taking cover, firing back with flintlock pistols. I turned away to Marque and Daniel, frozen in worry. The Pope looked scared of his mom. What is going on here? He asked. I pulled out my flintlock pistol, cocked it, aiming at his head. Marque and Daniel did the same. The Pope scoffed and stood up from his chair. The big iron church bell hung above our heads with ropes dangling down so people could pull the bell to ring. Who are you, gentlemen? This is the house of God, he exclaimed. Our names are what we told you earlier this day, but we are not looking for a job. We are pirates on the high seas, and we need a letter of marque signed by you, I said. I would never hand over something like that to pirates, he yelled. You will give it to us, Marque said, keeping him at gunpoint. Where is it? Daniel asked. I will not tell you, the Pope said, trying to sound brave, but there was terror in his trembling voice. I nodded to Daniel, who walked up to the priest. Stay away from me! He said, starting to back up, but there was no way for him to go. Daniel whacked him in the nose, breaking it, making it drip blood. The Pope yelped, and Daniel held a flintlock to his chest as the Pope gripped the broken, bloody nose. Where is it? I will not ask again. He frowned, blood running down his chin. It's in my vestry with my other papers that need to be signed. I carry them with me in case I need to address two honest sailors, not animals like you. God be my witness, who will burn in hell for the sins, mark my words. Daniel, full of fury of this, punched him in the mouth, making him tumble to the floor. But Daniel caught him and forced him on the table hard, the plate scattering on the floor, shattering, and the glass of red wine smashing. A jug of wine spilled to the floor. Where is the office? I asked. I don't know, he muttered. I put the barrel flintlock to the side of his head. Where is it? I rested my finger on the trigger. Walk to the nunnery. It's in the back of the confessionals. Take a left and you're there. It has a white door with a wooden cross above it. He groaned. Marque, get the letter, I said. Henry, soldiers are probably on their way. We hear from the shot outside, Marque said. We can't leave him. He'll run for it. I groaned, looking out the stained glass windows to see Finn and everyone else struggling under musket pop, and the soldiers advancing to the fountain. Well, they took cover. Time was running out. Then the bell tower hatch unlocked, and up came Elizabeth. Lordship, there's fire outside. Pirates have... She screamed when she saw the ordeal. Marque swung his pistol at her, and she froze. Bring us the letter. She was overcome by fear. She couldn't speak, and gestured to the Pope, leaned over on the table with Daniel, eyes, pistols aimed at him. Elizabeth, dear, get the letter and a quill. It's in my office. Be quick, he stammered. She nodded, backed up down the ladder and ran. She came back a minute later with a quill and letter adorned with red ribbons and wax seals. Marque took it from her. He walked over, spread it on the table in front of the Pope. He placed the quill in his fat hand. Sign it, Daniel said. We released our grip on him and kept our pistols aimed. The Pope took a quill, rested for a second, blood dribbling onto the table. Elizabeth stood with Marque aiming at her. You regret this, he muttered, signing the document. I snatched up the letter and scanned it, making sure everything was in order. The letter was littered with black ink writings, and at the bottom was his signature in black. I nodded and folded it into my pocket. One down. Daniel kept his flintlock at the priest. Your souls can still be saved from the sin, young man, he said. Don't go down this path. Daniel scoffed. We know what we're doing. It's the Catholic Church that thinks they rule the world, but that will end. I peered through the window to see the fight against the Spanish soldiers were getting worse. I quickly reached for the rope, pulled it, and the bell gave it a loud ring, making us cover our ears. I looked out the window as Finn looked up at me from the fountain and waved at me. I showed him the letter and we backed away from the glass window sill. Marque opened the hatch. Elizabeth backed away. Come on, let's go. Finn and the others need our help, Marque shouted. Daniel kicked the Pope down, making him roll to the floor. We made our way down the ladder, leaving the Pope and Elizabeth locked in the bell tower as the bell still rang out above. Once my boots planted to the bottom, I turned around and we ran down the stone hallway with windows on our sides to the nunnery. I cocked the second flintlock that I pulled from my sash and my belt. We scurried down the hall, Daniel and Marque ahead of me. We broke into the nunnery. Flintlocks aimed down at the big domed room with the beds and the confessionals on either side. Soldiers stormed through the doors with their muskets flaring. Marque whipped out his pistol as did Daniel. They scattered around the room, taking cover under the beds, screaming in fear to the Lord to save them from salvation. The Spanish soldiers let out a rattling volley through the room. The musket bullets sped through us as we hit the tiled floor under the beds, as the bullets slapped the sheets and pillows, causing feathers to fly up. Now! I yelled as the soldiers reloaded. I raised my arms up and fired both pistols, one bullet hitting the soldier in the neck as he fell dead. Another bullet pierced the nun as she ran from the back door in front of the soldiers, making a black dress run a dark crimson. Shit, I said, ducking from another volley. I reloaded my flintlocks. Bullets zipped over our heads. Daniel gritted his teeth. We need to make it outside. Some of the others need our help by the fountain. I peered over the bed as the soldiers lifted rope fuses on my guns. I looked to my left, where a few beds were lined in a row, leading to the group of our uniformed men. Cover me, lads, I shouted. Where are you going? Marque asked, shooting down another soldier. Left, I yelled. I scurried across the tile floor to the other white beds as musket pops zipped by me. I looked behind me to see Dan and Marque firing from behind the bed, taking down a few soldiers as blood ran into the cracks of the marble. I jumped onto the bed and hopped from one to the other, pulling out my new cutlass Brita Haugen. As musket fire blasted through the priory, I leaped off and slashed my sword into the chest of a man who fell screaming, dropping his musket. I collided bayonet and sword, skidding it down the rifle's snout and jabbing the blade deep into his heart. Charge! Daniel yelled. The ghost stood up and being and began firing wildly, taking down not only the soldiers but nuns trying to make their escape. I pulled my blade out of the chest and saw the group was in a bloody dead heap along with about 10 nuns and bleeding black robes. Well, shit, we shot the nuns, Reynolds said. No time, we need to get outside, Marque blurted. I wiped the blood from my cutlass, slung it back to its scabbard, loaded my pistols, and we darted through the courtyard. A group of Spanish soldiers aimed their muskets down from the halls above us. Musket balls popped and zipped as we three sprinted across the courtyard as bushes, marble benches, dirt, and bark flew up into the air around us as musket pop hit inches from my boots. Marque fired at one man from the window above me, making him fall out screaming and splatting on the cement with blood running. We ran out of the courtyard, down the hall and into the main cathedral. Soldiers were already awaiting us and letting off fire. I ran up on a pew, stepped on the back step, and I kicked up, firing 2 pistols into the heads of 2 men. I leaped out and ducked behind a pew as wood splinters flew into the air. Daniel aimed under the pew and shot the soldier in the leg, making him topple and stab himself with his own bayonet. After a few minutes of duck and cover, he took down the soldiers in a round of sword and musket fire. We darted towards the 2 doors, past the bloody bodies, and kicked one of the cathedral doors open, stumbling out into a battlefield. Smoke billowed the plaza. Soldiers were ducking behind the crates that had been set up, but I could hear the fire from the fountain. A horse ran past us, pulling a carriage on fire. Screams from noblemen and women echoed from the plaza. I raised my sword high. To the fountain! Down in Marque followed me as I sprinted across the foggy plaza, bullets going in every direction. Swords clashed and clinged. My boots pounded on the cobble as the church bells rang high above, echoing down to the plaza. I fired my flintlocks as the muzzle flared orange and blue smoke ran out of the barrel. I could see the fountain emerge from grey smoke. The marble of the men was destroyed, beat up by musket fire. We leaped over the fountain edge and ducked behind it with Tim, Finn, Cortez, Jeb, and Carl. They fired off rounds, taking out a few men. They keep coming! Tim yelled. How did this fog appear? I shouted. Finn! Jeb shouted. I glared at Finn. I'm sorry, I thought it would distract the soldiers, but it made it worse. We can't see. Fuck! Cortez shouted, ducking from the musket ball heading close to his head. Did you get the mark? My name is Zebediah Rivers. Did you get the mark? Boy, I did, I yelled. One down, Tim. Where is my crew? He shouted. In the buildings behind us. They should be coming in a minute. Finn yelled. Musket fire cried out as I aimed my flintlock into the fog. After 10 minutes of non-stop musket fire, the smoke cleared from the air and we could see littered bodies of noblemen and soldiers. Blood spread all along the plaza. Soldiers ahead of me were ducking behind crates firing at us. Finn yelled, move, move! Suddenly all 100 of Marque's crew blasted up from the sides of the side, never firing and shooting at the soldiers at the crates ducking. We looked at Finn in courage and raised the weapons. Into the fray we charge, lads! We stood up, leaping over the fountain. I jumped over the edge, pointing my flintlock, firing into the English soldiers. The French crew swamped the brigade of Spanish men and took them out with a hack of sword and knife. To the harbor! Marque ushered his crew. We all sprinted across the plaza, leaving a bell ringing cathedral in the background. As we weapons drawn, people screamed at us passing by, and the Spanish soldiers noticed us. As they screamed at us in Spanish, in which Cortez could not understand. They started to fire at us as we ducked behind a bookshop. Bullets pierced down the road as innocent men and women and children ran for their lives. Go to hell, you bastards! Cortez shouted, hitting a man in the jaw. We need to set sail now! Marque yelled. The French crew were ducking behind all kinds of cover they could find to avoid the musket fire. And suddenly, the musket fire stopped. It went silent. I felt the cobble began to rumble. What's happening? Tim asked. The whole crew looked at us in shock. I then looked down the street to see soldiers dropping their muskets and running away, screaming, passing by us. What's going on? Finn yelled. Men and women ran down the street past us. The French crew, seeing this, started to run with them towards our ship. Suddenly, over the narrow cobbled hill, a herd of 50 bulls pounded down the street, with sharp-curved black horns, sloppy snouts, and a ton of fury. The horns would go on that in seconds. It's the running of the bulls, Cortez yelled. Run! Cortez darted, carrying his pistol. The screamers started to run and sprint down the cobble. I carried my pistols in my right and left, puffing and puffing, my legs carrying me as fast as I can, down the road as my mates ran behind me. The bulls were barreling down the street, ready to pop us. The animals called in a screeching yell that sent chills down my spine. Daniel pounded down the street as Tim sped up, holding his cap on his head with one hand and his musket in the other as he ran past Daniel. The hooves of the beast clattered, getting closer and closer. Civilians sprinted in fear behind us. I turned over my shoulder to see a man get rammed against the wall. Another man was born with a horn into his mouth and slung over the bull's back and flailing in the air. My heart pounded against my ribs. I could see the harbour only a mile away. The ship docked in the bay. Brita awaiting us on board with the others and the rest of the Marque's crew. I ran up the assortment of stone steps and jumped down them as the balls charged over and down. Screams echoed behind me. People roared, trampled, smashed, and ran. I turned, firing a flintlock, hitting a ball in the net, taking my down as it rolled to a stop, and it didn't know stop. I moved closer now. I moved to the little dogs. I could see them going about. Brita on the deck talking to Ellie. Cast the line! I wheezed. For God's sake, cast the line! Bulls! Brita and Eleanor and the rest of the crew saw the herd of bulls, crying down into everyone's the docks. I watched the crew scramble across the deck, pulling down a rope ladder on the side. I hurried and gripped the hold, climbed up and planted my feet on the deck. Daniel and Tim riding up, along with Marque, Cortez, Finn, Jeb, and Kyle. Speed course! Send it out! Marque cried. The rest of the French crew wasn't so good. 70 of them were gored and trampled to the bulls. The screams from the deck as me and Daniel hurried across the deck, moving out white sails of the ship, moving away from the boat. I went out on the sail and climbed the ropes and letting them out. Brita clung to me as I fired into the ship, taking out a soldier on the block. Marque gripped it, turning it right, Tim fired a musket to keep the soldier from it. As we sailed away from Portugal, and the sounds of the balls and musket shot died down, and a new course to now Greenland, Brita clung to my arm, holding me so tight and I'm glad that I was all right. I kissed her forehead and clutched the letter of Marque signed by the Pope. We had accomplished our first mission by getting the first letter of Marque. I prefer to not allow these marks to be this hectic to get out of. For my sake, for Brita's sake, and for everyone's sake. Daniel had been shoulder with Finn had cut up his left arm from falling. We were beat up, but not as beat up as when we were in Denmark in the Courtyard. We were tough men, pirates, meant to live this life. As Marque sailed the Golden Bow into the open ocean, the letter of Marque was still in my palm. I looked up to the sky, knowing that God must have heard my prayer. Thank you for counting on me, I said. I pray that we would make it safely to Greenland and that God would hear my prayers. For once, I believed in God.
That was chapter 16, guys. So again, I apologize for that big gap of time. I went on a walk with my mother. So sorry about that. I could probably actually cut that out and be editing on my channel, so let's hope I can. But if I can't, just skip ahead to when I return. So I'm sorry about that, but thank you guys for listening to chapter 16, the Spain section. What was your favorite part in the Spain section? Also, that will never happen again where I am gone for that longer period of time. I am very sorry about that. That is one of my favorite sections, at least, in the audiobook. I know towards the end it kind of gets hard to the escape. Yeah, me too. I know towards the end it gets kind of hard to hear what I'm saying because that was a problem that I had when I was editing that section was the music just got too loud over my own voice, and so I kind of drowned it out for like a minute or two, which I'm sorry, that sucks. But hey, you can get the book. So thank you guys so much for joining. I don't know when I'm going to do another stream because next is chapter 17, 18, and 19. So yeah. That was a pretty fun chapter. I really enjoyed that one. Just like with the sound effects and like the church music in the background, it was just really pretty to me. But I really, really, really appreciate you guys joining. Please leave a like on the stream. Please subscribe to become a Jack Lantern. And I will see you guys in the next Siren's Call audiobook live stream, which either should be tomorrow or a few days from now. Just whenever I can, really. So that was chapter 16. Again, sorry for the big gap of time that I was gone. That will not happen again in any other stream that I plan to do for the channel. So yeah, thank you guys for listening, and I will see you in the next one.